This is an overview and brief tutorial on using the DSD Blu32 Configuration Utility. A link for the download to this utility will be found in the video description below. Download and unzip the file and run the program. Make sure your Blu32 device is connected to your PC, either by Bluetooth or USB. When you run it, you'll be presented with several tabs. You'll also see the name of the device in the HID device drop down, where it will say HID compliant device Blu32 controller. That should be the only device that you have there if you have multiples connected. Disconnect all the ones except for the one you intend to configure. You'll see the vendor ID, device ID, firmware version, battery level. The battery level is indicating an approximation of the amount of gas you got left in the tank. Again, your mileage may vary. Allow a margin of error and don't rely on the thing to keep working when the gas tank gets low. You might run out of gas sooner than you expected. Good life advice. We'll put an exclamation point on that. The next row is the button setup, right here. Button test, axis setup, the advanced tab, and keyboard. Unless you're using the PSX controller, this won't apply to you. Button setup. Here you have an option to use analog inputs, i.e. potentiometers. You'll also see rotary encoders. You use a standard rotary encoder. Our recommendations are on the DSD Site. We recommend the CTS encoders. They work perfectly and work forever, and we never have a problem with them. Rotary switches. C&K makes a great rotary switch. Again, that recommendation is on the DSD Site. And toggle switches, any type you want to use. Button test. Here's the button test menu. You don't have to go out to Windows to test it. You can just go ahead and test internally. The next tab is the axis tab. If you have any potentiometers connected to your device, here's where you'll configure them if you want to configure them. If you want to use them just plain as they are, default, full range, go right ahead. If you want to apply an axis zoom, let's say you've built a set of pedals and you're not using the full range of your 270-degree pots, you can take whatever portion that you're using and zoom that out so you still get your intended 12 bits of resolution. And if you want to invert them, you can do that too. And the scale, the output will show on your screen as you rotate the potentiometer through its range and travel. Right now I'm actually connecting a sample to show you what that will do. Button setup, this is on button 1. We'll apply it and update it. We'll go back to the, there you go. And you can see how, here's a sample potentiometer. There's the thing running and doing its thing. If you want to invert it, just uncheck the invert and then update again, and now it goes the other way. Yay. Remember, anytime you make any changes and you want to save them, click the update button here in the lower left hand or lower right hand corner. I don't want to get off the track here though. So that's the overview here of your component input selection. You can use potentiometers, rotary encoders, rotary switches, on-off toggle switches, and basic momentary push-button switches as you want to use them. In the event if you're using potentiometers, you must connect them to pins 1 through 8 You can't connect them to the other pins. They just won't work. It's not, the device physically requires you to do it that way. If you're not using potentiometers, don't worry about it. If you're using rotary encoders, make sure you know what pins you're connecting them to. Go ahead and check the pins that you've got them on and click the update button, and then your encoders will work. Same thing for rotary switches. Make sure you're keeping track of what pins you have those outputs put to. And the same thing with on-off toggle switches if you want to use them. The next thing, again, the button test. This will test everything, your rotary encoders, rotary switches, and buttons. Axis setup, I've just covered. So that's pretty straightforward. If you want to zoom your range, you can do that by going and looking in the raw value here of the output. It'll give you the raw value when you test your, let's say, your pedal arm. Let's say it starts at 1500 and ends at 3900. You'll enter 1500 here and 3900 up here. You'll update it, and then you'll zoom out. You'll take that particular section and zoom that over the 12 bits of resolution. The last tab you're going to look at is your advanced tab, and you'll see here we've got settings for button debounce time, which is the amount of time that the button connection is being read to prevent multiple bounces or multiple connections. Basically, there are times when there might be more than one electrical contact in a few milliseconds. What this does is allow the timing to adjust so you can limit any extraneous connections that you'd have or double bouncing. So leave it to 50. We found 50 works great. So just leave it there. And again, your mileage may vary. You might want to reduce that or increase it depending on what components you're using. The next thing is analog filtering. You can go from 0 to 100. 0 is 0% filtering. 100 is 100% filtering. This is for your analog inputs. Let's say you've got some jumpy pots. The higher this number, the smoother the resolution. You'll get less jumpiness. The better quality your potentiometers, the less you'll see this being used. I found personally 50 works real well. Your encoder button press time, which is your amount of time that the actual encoder is being, the button press of the encoder is being transmitted. That's 40 milliseconds, and then your rotary and toggle switch press time is 75 milliseconds. What I've found here and what we found after lots of testing is that these default values, when you push the default set defaults button, will be pretty much what everybody wants in about 99% of the cases. Again, your mileage may vary. You may want to make changes, and if you do, by all means, put them in here and make sure you mash the update button as you do that. The last thing is the require pin number for pairing. What this allows you to do is maintain a degree of Bluetooth security over your Bluetooth devices that you connect to your PC, and will prevent any potential man-in-the-middle attacks on your Bluetooth connection. While we think that the issue for it happening may be low, we want you to have the option to do it. Make sure you check this. You enter your pin number in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then hit update. And doing that, you'll unpair your device and repair it, and at that point it'll ask for your pin number. Make sure you keep it to 6 digits, don't go over that. If you do, or you want to change it, you will need to connect your device via the USB, uncheck this button, or uncheck that box in USB, and then re-update the thing so your pin number is cleared. Again, the option is there if you want to use it. Those folks who like security will want to use this. That's fine. Just make sure you remember your pin, and if you don't, you can remove the pin by connecting it USB. Last but not least is the section for our firmware updating. If we make any firmware updates, you will see that here. Actually, you'll see it published on the DSD site for any potential firmwares. We've pretty much got about 17 versions of the firmware, and what you're going to get is the newest, latest, and greatest, and working perfectly. I don't expect that we'll have to make any firmware updates, but who knows what the future holds, and if necessary, if a firmware update becomes necessary, you'll be able to update the firmware on your device, user side, and keep going about your merry business. So that's it. This is the DSD Blu32 Configuration Utility overview, fireside chat, and so forth and so on. Thanks for purchasing the device. I'm proud to say that I've worked real hard. All of us here at DSD have worked really hard to ensure that every customer has a great experience. Thank you very much for that. And as always, we're absolutely behind every product that we sell, and I think you're going to love this thing when you use it. And besides, I do this sim racing stuff with you. The last thing I like is the USB cable wrapping around my wheel. What a pain.